Okay, we wanted to try to put something more fun together. We've had some pretty serious podcasts lately, and we wanted to focus in on travel with the elderly. And there's so many tips and tricks related to travel, and I thought it'd be fun to get in. And we're going to talk about saving money as well as just little things that some people get really stressed out about travel, and especially travel with older adults. And so I thought I'd get into some of the things that you want to keep in mind whenever you're traveling with somebody who's older. So I'm going to get into the kind of the logistics of getting someone around first, and then I'm going to get into how to save some money potentially, and some myths about travel and that sort of thing.
Welcome to In Good Company, elder care in your backyard.
So first and foremost, and this goes for everybody, it's not just for the elderly, but especially in the elderly, you want to make sure that they stay very hydrated. Dehydration is definitely a problem. It's in my opinion, it's one of the major factors related to jet lag as well. Even though your circadian rhythms can get off, with or without dehydration just compounds it even worse. So making sure that they're hydrated, and the airlines are required to provide water with request. So as much water as you want, they shouldn't charge you for it. And most carriers will even allow for tea and coffee as well, and you can ask for seconds and thirds. But especially if you ask nicely, I highly recommend making friends with your steward or stewardess, but making sure that you let them know that you're traveling with an older person. They have maybe some special needs. Maybe they need to take medication at a particular time. That sort of thing, and they need to stay very hydrated. And oftentimes these folks totally understand, and they'll go out of their way to try to make sure you and your older loved one are comfortable. Also, they'll provide pillows and blankets on most flights, and so especially long haul flights, they'll provide blankets for warmth. Some of these planes can get really cold and uncomfortable for older adults, and you want to try to make them as comfortable as absolutely possible. The other thing, and this goes without saying, you want to make sure that they're wearing compression socks. It's very, very vital that to avoid blood clots and that sort of thing. Being stuck in a confined area without being able to move around very much, in certain circumstances, especially if they're on a flight that there's a lot of turbulence, they have the seatbelt sign on almost the whole flight. But if possible, and there's not turbulence, the seatbelt sign is off, there are some circumstances, if you've got a multi-hour flight, you want to try to see if you can get that individual up. Maybe even, you need to take them to the restroom. The steward or stewardess should be able to help assist you with that. So just hit your call button on, and just let them know that, you need to take your loved one to the restroom. You might need a little extra assistance to help get them there safely. And a lot of times they deal with this stuff all the time. And so again, making friends with those steward and stewardess can make the experience much more enjoyable. On long haul flights, and even on some short haul flights, they may have eye masks and earbuds available to do that. But if you think of it and you want to pack that up with you, because you may travel can wear an elderly person out a lot, and anywhere that they can nap a little bit and recoup some of that energy is always a good job. But it's very difficult for some people to get rest or sleep anyway on a plane. But it does help if you can reduce the noise and you can reduce the light. Sometimes helps them move into that kind of sleep mode a little bit easier. And so they will sometimes have that, but I highly recommend that. Sometimes if you're purchasing a flight and you cannot get seats together, that happens sometimes. Sometimes you're required to spend extra to select your seat, and maybe you just don't have the budget to do that. and you have to have your older adult sit somewhere else on the plane. Many times, when you're boarding the plane, if you just say, I've got an older adult, we're not sitting together, but I'd really like to sit together when everybody gets seated, would you help us see if it's possible to sit together? Those stewardess and stewards are extremely good about, talking to other customers and seeing if they will move in order to accommodate you to sit with that individual. That happens all the time. People switch seats all the time so that they can sit together, and most passengers will accommodate one way or another. And again, the steward and stewardess can facilitate that. If you're on a long haul flight and there is a meal provided, oftentimes they will allow for special meals. If there's special dietary needs, low sodium, gluten-free, dairy-free, kind of more high protein, diabetic safe type meals. They will oftentimes have something available on some of the long haul flights for that. But talking about food, if you have someone who you're worried about low blood sugar, they often have snacks on the plane. They'll come through oftentimes and do that. Sometimes if there's a lot of turbulence, they'll cancel the onboard food and drink offering. But if you hit your call button, let them know you've got somebody you're concerned about low blood sugar. They often have snacks up there that they can bring you, and they're happy. Trust me, they don't want a problem on their plane, and so giving you some snacks and some drinks to keep that person happy and feeling okay is really, really important to them as well. So don't forget that. The stewardesses oftentimes will help stow luggage. If you're, taking on, a carry-on and, a roller bag, or your personal item and a carry-on, sometimes those things are heavy. And, if you don't want to hurt yourself and definitely don't want your older adult trying to do this, because I've actually seen somebody take a spill because they were trying to, lift a bag and they just weren't capable. The steward or stewardess are happy to try to help get that up into or other passengers. I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've helped somebody get their bag up or down, and there's always somebody within reach that, if you just kind of give them the look and say, do you mind helping me with this bag? They're happy to jump up and help you. And oftentimes you'll get offered that, but just please be safe regarding getting bags up into the carry-on bin, and especially taking it down. Sometimes you forget how heavy that thing is, and when it's up that high, it can be a little dangerous. And so, asking for assistance, people are happy to help. So often we run into that. Sometimes you may want to make sure you have that loved one in an aisle seat. You want them to have access to the aisle, and if they need assistance getting in and out, it could be a little more difficult if they're stuck by the window rather than being in the seat. And if you're needing to assist them in and out to go to the restroom, sometimes people find it easier to have them sit in an aisle seat. This is a little bit more on preference, because some people feel like, well, if I can get out first, I can assist them easier. That sort of thing. You kind of have to play with it a little bit of what your preference is, but oftentimes I personally like to have an elder adult sitting in the seat, on the aisle, because it's just easier for me to assist them. It's not a bad idea to make sure that you've got, if you're traveling with an older adult. Now I'm a little biased because I'm a physical therapist and I've been using some of these tools my entire career. but there is what's called a gait belt, and it's a belt that you can find on Amazon if you just put in gait belt, and you can size it to that, individual, or, they strap on much. It's a little bit different than a regular belt. It's a little thicker, and you put it around their waist just like you would a regular belt, but you don't loop it through, obviously, their pants. But it does help you get a hold of their center of gravity. And you have a lot more control if they start to lose their balance. I don't recommend trying to, you might be able to trust a regular pants belt if they're wearing one. But holding on to their center of gravity often is much easier to control whether or not they're going to have a fall or not. And so sometimes those gait belts can be a lifesaver, especially if you're going to be getting up and down several times, they're going to be walking, and if they're unstable, you want to make sure that you've got something. Also, make sure they have an assistive device. I know this sounds silly, but oftentimes you'll have an older adult who isn't recognizing that they need assistance, and they'll walk without any assisted device at all. Sometimes you can get pushback from them because they don't want to look disabled or look like they need extra assistance. But it's amazing how much a cane or a walker can really, really help. Now, I will say that oftentimes some of those aisles are too narrow for a normal standard walker. And oftentimes if it gets to that point, they'll have, you're already asking for extra assistance from the airline, and please make sure that you do that. When you have, especially if you have a connecting flight, that most airlines, really all the airlines have some sort of accommodation where they'll have, a team member who's coming with a wheelchair, making sure they get on first, get off first. If there's a connecting flight, they're gonna be in contact with that gate, and so it's really, really important that you ask for that assistance. So don't try to take it on all yourself. It can be so stressful otherwise. Just ask for the assistance. It's free of charge. There's no extra charge for that. And they'll make sure that you get to that next connection, because it can be stressful enough to figure out where that next gate is and trying to figure out how the best way to get there. And these people do this day in and day out. They'll get you there fast. They'll get people moved out of their way. I've seen them yell at people on the train to scoot over, and we're getting on, and they'll get you to that next gate. And so I highly recommend using the services that are already, the escort service that's already available. And we can put some more information on that in the show notes on how to go about that, but make sure that you're utilizing that. So a lot of people oftentimes are worried, just to circle back on those assistive devices, how they're gonna, maybe they had to go to the airport with a wheelchair or with a cane or walker or whatever. All of those things are checked free of charge. They will get those on the plane. There probably are some, rules around that, but there's a 75 plus kind of rule for getting through TSA and that sort of thing, that will help older adults get through TSA quicker. And there's a program out there for that. We can put some information in the show notes on that. But that sometimes can be very stressful. You're thinking, how am I going to get through TSA? And take care of them and take care of me, because it's, oh man, when you're standing in that line, you got people waiting behind you, and you get up there and it's your turn to put, all your stuff out of your pockets and different things like that. It stresses people out so much. And sometimes it doesn't help if you have a TSA person who's, trying to get people through too quickly as well. Just relax. They're just trying to do their job. Everybody's going to get through, but this 75 plus shortcut with TSA can be very helpful in helping you get your people through and yourself through quicker. If you have, an older parents, you got two people you're trying to manage. 'Cause I've seen that before. Those poor people, they're trying to manage all that themselves. And I just think, oh boy, this could have been much easier if they had asked for the assistance from the airlines to begin with. That would have gone probably much better. One other thing I'll mention is that you want to make sure that you're keeping any medications that you need in your personal item handy. If you know you're going to potentially need something, you can't cover everything, but if you know there's particular medications that you may have to take at a particular time, maybe you need to take them with a meal, and so you need to make sure that you've packed some sort of snack or something maybe even heavier if it's a medication that they need to take, but making sure that you have that on hand. Make sure it's not like packed in your roller bag, but it's in your personal item so you can grab it easily from under the seat and that sort of thing, and get that. So that's a simple thing, but I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people try to get into their roller bag to get something like some medication or something like that, and you don't want to miss those medication windows. You want to make sure that you're keeping on the right schedules. Now I want to switch over to talking about how to save money. And just maybe some of the basic myths around traveling, because traveling can be extremely expensive, but just understand that the traveling from 20, 30 years ago is very, very different today. So they have what's called dynamic pricing now in the airline industry and in the hotel industry. So what that means is that depending on demand, that price will go up and down. And sometimes within a single day, it will change in price. And so just understand that there's no fixed pricing for a lot of things. Now, I said that as a blanket statement. There are exceptions to that, but for the most part, most airlines are on dynamic pricing. If you're flying domestically here in the United States or flying internationally, you want to understand that that price is going to change. So if you get on there and you are searching for flights, oftentimes my first recommendation or go-to is to go to Google Flights first. If you're not familiar, Google Flights, if you just type in Google Flights, will take you to a website, and you can put in your destination you're wanting to go to and the date that you're wanting to go there, and it will load in most of the carriers and the cash price for that. But just know that if you move that date by 1 or 2 days, you can get significantly different pricing. And so that's my second major recommendation, is being flexible can make a huge difference. Now, if you have a tight work schedule, or you can only ask certain days off, totally understandable. You may be locked in, but just understand that even if you book with most major carriers, they will allow you to change the flight. So let's say you book with American Airlines for a particular date and flight, and you are, you had to maybe spend a little bit more than you wanted to, or, it was, within your budget, but you still want to save money. My recommendation is, if you can't move the date, then, and you need to make sure that you lock in that flight, then go ahead and purchase the flight. But then on Google Flights, there is a way to monitor that particular flight. So if you go back to Google Flights, you put in your dates, your times, and then you look for the exact time that is departing and what time it's arriving, and you find that specific flight and you click on it, there is a place on that screen for you to track that particular flight's price. And so you'll get an email occasionally if that flight goes up in price or down in price, and depending on the parameters of what you put in. There's other parameters. I'm not going to get into the details of that. I just want you to know that that exists so that you can track the price of that flight. And so if you are locked into a particular day, that flight can go up and down significantly in price. And so if it goes down significantly, you can go back to American Airlines, and there's a button on there when you look at your flight online and says change flight. You can click on change flight. You can pick the exact same flight and it will automatically apply the discount. So you don't have to cancel that flight or anything. You can keep everything the same, but you can actually save money just by monitoring that flight. And so the beautiful thing about that is, you don't have to really do a whole lot other than just wait and see if there's a way to save some money. Now, the most effective way, in my opinion, of getting great deals on flights is to be flexible. If you can move your dates around just a little bit, that can make a huge difference. And so if you're like, we'd like to go in July, but you're not really locked in to when in July to go quite yet, then you can kind of move your dates around and see when the best prices are. And so if you can stay a little longer or stay a little shorter period of time and adjust those, you can save a significant amount of money on your flights. And so that's kind of the first criteria. Now, if you just want to travel and your destination, you're just like, I want to go someplace fun. I'm not 100% locked into where. I just want, I want to go with my older adult, family member, and we want to go do something fun, but we're not really locked into what or where. Oh man, you combine that with flexibility and you can really save a lot of money. So that's where you've got these three factors. You've got the cost, you've got the destination, and you've got the timing. And so if you have flexibility on destination and on the timing, you can save an enormous amount of money. And if you're on a lot of these folks are on fixed incomes, they can't afford a huge amount of money, but they still want to enjoy, some travel. Then I would recommend making sure that you're looking around. Now, I will tell you that some people just lean on travel agents, and some travel agents are really good about saving money, and some aren't. But there are a lot of great agents out there that will help you from beginning to end to kind of plan all of those itineraries out. Just understand that you're probably going to pay a bit of a premium on that, more so than if you were to try to book some of this stuff yourself. And we can have some later videos that go to kind of dig into, traveling with older adults, ways to do that. But that's just a big, just kind of philosophy is that if you are flexible on destination. So going back to Google Flights, you can put in your your home airport. And then, here in the Springfield Branson area, and then you can hit a button on Google Flights called Explore. And that will show you all, like in the United States or even abroad, it depends on where you scroll, because they show this map, and it'll just give you pricing based on the dates that you're wanting to travel. And you can broaden those dates even so that, you're covering a larger area. But then you can really see, like this particular, that looks interesting and the price is great. And you can find some really, really good deals traveling in the United States or even abroad, and really enjoy some different places if you want. And sometimes it's kind of fun because, there's probably some places that aren't on your radar that you can research a little bit and find out if that's going to be right for you. Another thing that I'll just kind of mention as a side thing while we're talking about going to different areas is that some places are better at accommodating wheelchairs than others. Sometimes, taking bags is a little bit easier in different places than others. If, trying to walk can be a little tricky on cobblestone, for instance, or that sort of thing. So always keep that in mind. And there's the beautiful thing about today's age is there's tons and tons of information out there about the destination that you're going, and whether or not you need to think about whether or not, how are we going to get around and that sort of thing. So there are some people that they don't take roller bags. They pack they pack lighter, not super light, but they pack lighter, and they'll have, instead of a roller bag, they'll have a backpack, and they'll pack that way. And they'll have a lot of people that they'll actually, they have these little dry detergents that come in they look like a sheet, and they dissolve in water. And some people will like wash a shirt or a pair of pants and leave them hang overnight. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but when you're trying to pack light, when you're traveling with an older adult, you do what you got to do. And a lot of folks will actually, if they're going to be gone for 2 weeks, they're not going to take 2 weeks of fresh clothes. They're actually going to just take, 4 or 5, outfits that they can fit as compact as possible. And we can talk about gear on another video, but when you're doing that, then you can wash and dry some of those things overnight. There's particular, I think merino wool is one that a lot of people highly recommend. There's other ones out there, but again, packing as light as absolutely possible to get around some of these places is really good. But some are getting much better at accommodating people with disabilities, and you may have to, from the airport do an Uber to get you, door to door, that sort of thing. You're not going to maybe be doing public transportation as much, although there are certain locations where public transportation is very accessible, and we can work on trying to get a list of some of those locations that are extremely accessible to people with functional mobility issues. But that, again, when traveling with older adults, it's kind of like, it's just exactly like traveling with kids. You have to think about all the little things in order to make that less stressful and more enjoyable all the way through. Even travel companies struggle with this. I've heard a lot of horror stories over the years of people, signing up for some, travel company thinking that they were just going to take care of everything, and it didn't really turn out like that. So you have to be a good consumer and know how to travel in a way that is going to keep you and your loved one safe and reduce the stress. And so, because the whole point of it is to have fun and to really enjoy yourself. So speaking to that also is to make sure that you're not overbooking things. So I know that some of these trips might be what you might consider a once in a lifetime trip, and you might be tempted to try to do everything. I really stress how important it is to, maybe they're best early in the morning. And so going out and doing one activity early in the morning for, an hour, maybe 2, and then going back to the hotel and resting. And plugging in those naps or those rest times. Already you're going to be dealing with jet lag as it is. But when you're traveling with an older adult, you definitely have to plug in quiet time, resting time, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in the hotel. I oftentimes, when we're traveling, my wife and I automatically plug in nap times through the day, and sometimes we'll go to a park or something that's a little more serene. You can sign up for tours, but be careful. If you sign up for a tour and it's 4 to 6 hours, that's a slug. I mean, by the time you're done with that, you're exhausted. They're exhausted, and you might enjoy that. I can't say, but for sure it's each their own. But I usually recommend people be very careful about signing up for, longer tours, because you can wind up, really, it's bigger than your appetite, I guess, is the best way to put it. You think you're going to be, good to go, but 2 hours in, you're already exhausted. You don't have, you're in a place where you can't just jump on transportation and get back to the hotel and that sort of thing. You're kind of out and about, and it is something that you want to keep in mind. There's some myths around, booking on particular days or having a particular browser or that sort of thing. The browser thing and using a VPN, there's some things there, but not enough to really save. So I think the big thing that we, focus in on is making sure that you understand that the pricing is gonna fluctuate. There is no, like, if I book on a Tuesday or something like that doesn't exist anymore. There are high seasons and low seasons for places, obviously, and the pricing does change significantly. If you want to go to Europe less expensively, if you go in winter, you are going to save a monumental amount of money because flights are way cheaper. Maybe not during Christmas markets, but I'm just saying, like, there are off seasons. Trying to book a flight during an off season, trying to book a hotel in off season is going to be easier and much cheaper. So having said that, those little myths really don't apply. I always recommend people take the earliest flight possible. So getting up early with that elderly loved one, getting to the airport early, making sure you're on that first flight out. If there's going to be cancellations, they're going to come later in the day. Now, weather could play a big factor, and there's lots of other things in there, but generally speaking, the best time to book a flight is early in the morning, being the first flight out, because you're going to be less likely to have your flight canceled. You also potentially could get to that other airport. If your flight is delayed, there should be other flights that will come after still, and you're not going to be forced to stay the night at a connection city. So I usually recommend people trying to take the first flight out during the day. There's lots of questions about when to book, and oftentimes the best deals you will find is booking either far out or close in. So a lot of the airlines will release somewhere in the 330 days out, somewhere in that ballpark. But looking for flights early oftentimes can produce some lower prices. And then obviously last minute can also, that can be kind of stressful for people, trying to, book a trip in a very short period of time. It's doable, and some people who are good at it can save an enormous amount of money booking last minute travel. But starting early and trying to book, when you're in the 3 to 6 month realm, most people are looking in that 3 to 6 month realm. And I know it's hard sometimes to make plans that far in advance, but again, it is generally speaking, internationally, you're trying to get it, like 8 to 11 months out if you can. Domestically, that 1 to 4 months is still doable, but again, the further out you go, sometimes the better, and then putting a price alert in Google Flights to kind of track that money-wise. I'm not going to get into the points and miles part of this, because there's a lot there to unpack. And maybe we'll do something, if people request that to get into when trying to fly with somebody who's elderly. And, the points and miles thing is very a great way to save money, a very big way to save money. But we're not going to do that here. We're just going to talk about cash deals at this point. Okay, one thing I want to mention is that you might be tempted to book a basic economy flight, I don't recommend it. You'll save money on a basic economy flight versus a main cabin. And different domestic airlines call it something a little bit different, but it's the most basic airfare, often comes with the most restrictions, and I don't recommend it. Pay the little bit of extra money to get a main cabin. It will allow you flexibility to move that flight, whereas with a basic economy, often you don't. And it will come with some other perks to it. The basic economy is just what it sounds like. It comes with no frills and very little ability to move. Things come up, people get sick, things get dropped, and you can definitely, there are some people who will book a basic economy flight and then add insurance to it, and they might as well have just booked a main cabin because it almost works the same. They can move that flight or even sometimes cancel it for airline credit or sometimes original form of payment. So I don't book basic economy. And when you're on Google Flights, there is a toggle button to exclude basic economy. So when you're looking for prices on flights, I would recommend staying away from basic economy and when you're searching, avoid that if you can. This podcast has gone, or this informational podcast has gone on way too long. But these are a lot of tips and tricks that I have used personally and have heard that other people have used. There's a lot more, and maybe we'll come back and do another one of these if people want to learn more about traveling with older adults and how to save money and all of the things, destinations and different things like that. We can dig into that a little bit more if the viewers want that. We can definitely circle back on that. But anyway, that we wanted to make something a little more fun today to talk about, how to travel, because often you're trying to get them to a wedding or some other family event, and it can be very, very stressful. And there may just be, there's this desire to travel, oftentimes, the kids are retired and the older adults are still, wanting to enjoy a little bit of travel. And I highly recommend it. It's great stimulus for that individual. It's a lot of fun. And oftentimes, you'll stimulate memories from their old, they're traveling, or maybe they never got to experience anything, and you have an opportunity to help them experience something for the first time. It can be a beautiful thing, and I love travel, and I want everyone who wants to travel to be able to do it more.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And we'd love to stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram at In Good Company Elder Care Podcast.
You can also find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at IGC Pod, and on TikTok at IGC Elder Care Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to In Good Company Elder Care in Your Backyard. I'm John Ray, and I've been joined by my amazing co-host, Spencer Ernst. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alex Wallace, for helping bring this show to life. Until next time, take care, and remember, you are always in good company.